Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live powered by Olipop. Parker, take it away.
That's right, folks. Cherry Cola is the Olipop of choice tonight. This was the only flavor that, as of yesterday, I had yet to try, and it has quickly climbed up my personal rankings. I think this is at least top 3. If you like Cherry Coke, this tastes exactly like Cherry Coke. But get this, folks, it's good for you. All of Olipop's 16 delicious flavors come with 9 grams of fiber in every can, prebiotics to enhance digestive health, and only natural flavors and sweeteners, nothing artificial in these cans, and never more than 5 grams of sugar. You can check them out at drinkolipop.com and use promo code CHAMPU20 to get 20% off. Or if it's easier, just follow OU Insider on Twitter. Our most recent tweet has a link that you can use to access the Olipop site and get an instant $15 off.
All right, we're gonna just get this out of the way. We gotta pay one last bill real quickly.
Oh wow, you're diving right in, huh?
I'm just gonna dive right in. Are you all ready to spice up your Thanksgiving?
Here we go.
As we dive into the mountains of mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce, let's talk about the unsung hero of the holiday season, the Manscaped Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. That's right. It's time to go cold turkey on your old razor and take care of your own turkey leg with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. Visit manscaped.com and use promo code OU Insider for 20% off plus free shipping. Again, go to manscaped.com, use the promo code OU Insider to get 20% off plus free shipping. It works. I use it on basically my chest, ears, nose hairs. It's got a whole bunch of adapters. The Lawnmower 5.0 is awesome. Again, go to manscaped.com, use promo code OU Insider for 20% off plus free shipping, and enjoy Thanksgiving in style with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. Gobble, gobble, boys. All right. That last part, I just couldn't.
Gobble, gobble, boys. Were those your words?
That is in the read. That is in the read. We are to
I'll
read
take your word for it, I suppose.
Yeah, it's in there. I promise you, I would not make up gobble gobble boys. That's above my especially after I said take care of your own turkey leg. Like that's just too much. Well, welcome to the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube live.
On that note,
on that note,
football and recruit.
There we go. All right. Chat going. And that's what we're here for, OU Athletics. And it looks like we froze. Yep.
We froze?
It looks like it caught up. I'm trying to gather here what's going on. So, all right. Looks like we're good to go now. All right. Let's talk about the Big 12. Let's talk about the Big 12 because the Big 12, they call it a clarification, Parker, in how they went about and changed things up.
Yeah. I mean, it's what everybody's talking about right now. Like it's that is the thing that people are up in arms under, and understandably so, because the Big 12 did change their language, even if they didn't explicitly change the way that the tiebreaker was interpreted. Even if they can make that argument, it's undeniable that they changed the language therein. And so at the end of the day, it doesn't affect Oklahoma nearly as much as it affects Kansas State. If I'm a Kansas State fan right now, given the clarification or reinterpretation of the tiebreaker scenarios, I feel like my team got shafted. And so I feel for Kansas State fans in all of this, because given the new interpretation of the tiebreaker rules that we all thought we had somewhat of a handle on a couple days ago, now it feels like the Wildcats' path to a potential berth in the Big 12 championship game in Arlington is a lot more difficult to attain and to achieve right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, essentially, Texas loses, right? Oklahoma State loses, you're in. Like that's your go-to. You've got essentially 4 total games left, and you just got to hope one of those 2 teams loses one of those 4 games, right? Cumulatively as a whole. And obviously they both have 2 apiece, but I'm just saying you got 4 chances total for one of those opponents to lose. And I don't know that the odds are great. I mean, if I was a betting man, I would say Oklahoma's not going to make the Big 12 title game, but I don't bet. So therefore, I will sit here and say, what would you give the odds? Like looking at what Oklahoma State have, they go to Houston, then they have BYU at home.
BYU's not beating Oklahoma State.
Correct.
If Oklahoma State's got, if they're going to lose, it's got to be this weekend to Houston.
Correct.
I firmly believe that whatever happened, I think we will know definitively after this weekend whether Oklahoma is winning in to the Big 12 championship game the final week of the regular season. Because if the Sooners beat BYU, which we expect that they will, and Texas, it's an either or scenario, right? Texas can lose to Iowa State or Oklahoma State can lose to Houston. At that point, it opens up the path for the Sooners. But you look at those 2 teams' matchups in week 13. Texas plays Texas Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma State plays BYU. I would be very surprised if those games are even close. So whatever happens, I think happens this weekend. If Oklahoma State beats Houston and Texas beats Iowa State, I would say you can just about kiss it goodbye as a Sooner fan.
Yeah, I mean, the odds shrink significantly, but I don't think you can just write it completely off, because last year I don't think anybody thought that Texas was going to lose to Texas Tech at the end of the year.
I mean, the poke choke is a real thing. Like, Oklahoma State needed 1 win in order to make the BCS title game back in 2011, and they lost to an Iowa State team that was, what, 2-9 at that point?
Yeah, it can happen on Thursday. Look, night games and Ames, deadly games. They're very hard. It's very hard to win up in Ames at night. Weird things happen. I'm pretty positive.
You found that out the hard way last time they were up there.
And not only that. Well, last time they had the night game last year.
Yes, last time they played up there.
Yeah. They did the fake field goal and all that. But not only that, they've got to bring out the black unis, right? Like they're going to bring out the black unis.
You'd hope so.
Yeah. I mean, those things are clean. I love them. Regardless of the fact, if Oklahoma wins out 10-2 season after 6-7 in 2022, I think Oklahoma fans are going to take that with the potential of being 11-2. If you're an Oklahoma fan, you look at that and you go, all right, the program's moving in the right direction. You have to look at it that way. And on that note, we do have a super chat here. Russell Jenkins, thank you so much. This guy's the man. He's the guy that helps us with the tailgate. Be sure the last home game you were in Norman. It's on a Friday. I get it, 11 a.m. kickoff. But Russ has that thing rocking and rolling, and it's going to rock and roll all the way over into the SEC next year. We're going to be in the same spot, same bat channel, all that, same tent, all that type of stuff. So you're going to want to get in tune with us. We have drinks. We've got all that type of stuff. We got food. We're right there where the Walk of Champions is. We have the best position. They park the buses and they walk right by the OU Insider tent before they walk by anything else. So you are in the prime of prime spots if you come and join the OU Insider tailgate every Saturday before
Russ is on one tonight. Russ is the man when it comes to
he's doing the gobble stuff. He also is the one that got, what was that? What was the offensive lineman that he had me read that one time? Because I did not think he would be one that would try to do that.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to repeat it, but
all right.
He also said in the chat, I've heard OK State boys come up a couple of inches short a lot.
Gobble, right?
But But he did throw us our first super chat question.
Yes.
So
Yes.
let's get to it.
Over
Over,
under. How many more commits in 2024? And of course, he ended it with Gobble Gobble Boys.
If I give you 2.5, Brandon, which direction you lean in?
On commits?
Yes.
I'm going to go over. I'm going to say 3.
Really?
Yeah,
That's kind of where
agree.
I'm at too, because
Mhm.
I think there's a variety of ways Oklahoma can get to 3 as well. Got to have Grant Bricks. You know that much.
Yeah.
From there, a defensive back, maybe Cameron Campbell. And then are you banking on a flip at that point? Is that number 3? Whether that's
I still think one happens. Do I know where or how or when it happens? I don't. I think one thing we have completely neglected to talk about in something that is going to be so critical moving forward, and I think it's something Oklahoma fans probably, you look at the not making the Big 12 title and how that can be a blessing. Of course, you want to go out. You've owned the Big 12. You've got 14 Big 12 championships. You'd love to end it with 15, right? That would be just magnificent. On the other end, if Texas wins it, they won the first Big 12 championship, correct? They beat Nebraska, if I remember correctly. On that 4th and 1, James Brown. Is that correct? 96, right? Yep. If Texas does end up winning it, okay. Guess what not playing in the Big 12 title does for you? Yeah, it's a bad look as far as whatever. But if you're 10-2 at the end of the season, you're a top 10 team, nobody's gonna look at you and go, well, you're a piece of crap. It allows you to do in-homes more so than you would be able to do if you are playing in the Big 12. And I think that's something you've got to look at, as you got that extra little, time to go hit the road on the recruiting trail. It's evaluation period about that time. So there's a lot of things working in your favor and that stance. Again, you want to win the Big 12. Everybody gets it. You want to whatever. But at the same time, as I said, the in-homes I think are critical, particularly with flips, because if you can sit down in that home and make the whole family feel comfortable, you're going to flip somebody. It may be, and I'm going to say it may be Terry Bussey. It may be Williams Winery. It may be somebody we're not even talking about right now. There's plenty of other players out there, particularly in the A&M class and some other classes, that if you read the Football Scoop, I'm going to give them a little pub. If you read Zach Barnett's, what do you call it, Nuclear Winter?
Football Scoop is a good place to go for that kind of stuff.
Yes, Football Scoop is. And if you read what they talked about, having in-homes and being Todd Bates, being Miguel Chavis, Brandon Hall, those type of guys that are just going to swoon families over the second they walk through the door. That works in Oklahoma's favor more so than maybe even playing in the Big 12 title, to be honest. Am I crazy for that stance?
I mean, is that a serious question as opposed to rhetorical?
No, it's a serious
I don't
question.
think you're crazy. No,
well, I am crazy. I am crazy.
Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
People are like, yes, you're crazy. I mean, hey, in-home, they said in-homes didn't pay dividends in 21 or 22.
That's not true.
That is 100% false. In 22, in 2021, Oklahoma, before, that is patently false, because
Kobe McKenzie.
Yeah.
Kobe McKenzie was going to Texas before in-homes.
Yes. And think about all the other guys that had decommitted and or were questioning their commitment and looking around.
Yep.
And they ended up solidifying within in-homes. In 2022, they worked. You had the number 8 class in the country. What are we talking about?
Yeah, and at that point in 2022, they did the previous year. Obviously, going in Bowen, at that point, all you really had to do was seal it up, and the Sooners did that. And home was a big part of that. But in 2021, especially because the coaching staff had just gotten there. I mean, they were literally assembling the staff as the in-home period opened up. It was an in-home that ultimately led R. Mason Thomas to book an official visit to Oklahoma and eventually to commit. That's one guy you like having right now.
Mm-hmm.
The same can be said for Grayson Halton. I'm trying to think, who else did they add down the stretch there at the very end of the 2022 cycle? Some guy, Jaden Gibson. There you go. There's another one. A couple of guys have already moved on. Nick Evers.
Well, people are
Dalton
saying
Darber,
Derek Moore flipped to Michigan, but they're completely neglecting.
That was before. Yeah, that was before Venables had even been hired.
Yeah, and
as soon as Riley left, Derek Moore was out.
Yeah, Gabriel Banlow didn't flip to A&M. Yeah, we get that, but he was going to flip to A&M the second Thibodeau wasn't the defensive line coach. His family made that perfectly clear that Thibodeau is what sold them on Oklahoma. They loved Calvin Thibodeau, and Todd Bates had been up front. They said they wanted to be a defensive end because that's where he became Under Armour All-American, was at a defensive end. And Todd Bates told him, look, you're a defensive tackle. You weigh 280 pounds right now. You were going to weigh 300 pounds by the time you're a sophomore. You were going to be. And everybody else lied to him, straight up lied to him and said, oh, yeah, you're going to be a DN. Come play for us. Yeah. How do I know that? I know that because I know it as fact, because the Dindies told me straight up that they were promised defensive end at A&M. Like that's true. And the second Bates was up and honest with them, it was he wasn't going to go to Oklahoma at that point. And his relationship, because Bates had not been recruiting him anymore, the second he committed to Oklahoma, they moved on at Clemson. At that point in time, nobody thought that they would be coaching at Oklahoma and or recruiting Dindy and all that type of stuff. And then he got there, and Elijah Robinson had the better relationship. Like, all of that plays into it. So the church thing, I get it. Everybody wants to harp on that church thing. That church was happening to get back closer to his family in Louisiana and Oklahoma, and they chose the Houston area and the College Station area for the college presence before all the offers took place. It looks convenient, and I'm not saying something may or may not. I can't sit there and say one way or the other that it didn't. But all of that, the location was decided long before, because A&M wasn't even way up there up until Elijah Robinson started digging his claws into it. And we all know he's one of the best defensive line coaches in the country as far as recruiting goes. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to jump in and add this, because obviously the A&M situation is very pertinent right now, given how many guys Oklahoma has finished second to A&M for over the years.
Yeah.
I'm very intrigued to see what happens with Terry Bussey, because I had a conversation with a very, very good source. This is probably back in August, right before the season started. And at that point, Bussey had been leaning A&M for quite a while. And I'm sanitizing here, but what that source told me, pretty much verbatim, was, yeah, he wants to commit to A&M, but he's not going to yet because he wants to see if A&M sucks. He didn't say sucks, but he said he basically wants to know if the wheels are gonna fall off the wagon for A&M this year. Well, A&M started 3-1. That was good enough for Terry Bussey. He hopped on board. Now, what has transpired since then, we all have borne witness to. So, now that A&M does suck, it leads you to wonder, and obviously now the staff that recruited him made him a priority early in the process and helped stake A&M to that big lead that they maintained throughout. Now that all of that goes by the wayside, what happens? Because Bussey's not the type of kid that's going to go out in the public eye and make a whole lot of noise about decommitting or flipping. Like whatever's done will be done relatively quietly. But I do think that if he does get back on the market, that is one that Oklahoma is going to have a very, very good chance to lock down. Again, that is contingent upon him hitting the market again. But if he were to move on from A&M, I'd like Oklahoma's chance, and they'd have to duke it out with LSU. Don't get me wrong there. He's been to LSU a lot. But I think that's a battle Emmett Jones and Oklahoma could win.
I agree.
And what's more, Brandon, I go back to it. Think about how many guys A&M and Oklahoma have battled for over the years. Some of them have gone to Oklahoma, but the majority have gone to Texas A&M. How many of those guys, if they hit the transfer portal, are immediately getting on the horn with the OU staff before anybody else? Because of the relationships that they have there and the experience that they had as a recruit in and around Oklahoma.
Yeah, no, several of them. All right. Let's real quickly. We'll talk about that there in just a second. Let's get to this super chat since I couldn't find it. Luckily, Spencer went back and found it. James Stimac says, is it true 2025 offer was pulled, aka Cordova? Look, I'll answer this really quickly. Look, that situation is not something. How do I want to word it? I'm just gonna say it, man. Like, number one, the situation was crappy. Like, that whole situation was crappy. Like, it sucked. Like, I don't know how to. There's no defense. Like, it was a kid being a kid, but at the same time, like, that could be very deadly. What took place at the same juncture. So you have that aspect. But to reports that is, I don't know, Parker. I just to throw a kid under the bus like that after everything they're dealing with, I get there's consequences to your actions, stuff like that. But I don't think he was being pursued that heavily to begin with. Am I wrong on that? I don't think they were like all in on him at this juncture. I think there was kind of arm's length a little bit. They're recruiting him, but he wasn't a guarantee, if that makes sense. Am I wording that right, Parker? You want to add on to that?
Here's what I can say. Regarding that situation, the offer has not been pulled. I don't know what happens down the road, but as of right now, the offer has not been pulled. And as far as the situation itself goes, I've had some conversations with folks that know exactly what went on. And look, he's a 16-year-old kid who did something stupid.
Yeah.
Which is what 16-year-old kids do. How many of us at age 16 didn't do something stupid? And it was something really stupid, to be fair. Like, it's it's not on the same plane as gosh, I don't know. The point is, it is something really stupid, objectively, something I'm sure he would like to have back. What it does not do is make him untouchable by any means. And so I would just keep that in mind. He is 16. He is young. He is to a certain degree immature and does not deserve to have his character judged based on this one instance. And with anybody, people look at this, they look at situations like this a variety of different ways. From where I stand, I'm always willing to give somebody a second chance if it's a one-off type of deal. And what's important to understand and recognize about this kid is that it's not like he has a checkered past where stuff like this has become commonplace. This was one really stupid decision that he made that he's going to have to answer for. He's going to be held accountable for, and that he's going to have to work to get past. And that in and of itself is punishment enough for a kid that age, because when you have everything out there in front of you, especially as a football recruit of that caliber, and whether it's true or not, you have to deal with reports swirling that the offer you cherish the most, and he does, has been revoked. then that, like, if you haven't already been shocked back to reality by the gravity of the circumstances, that'll do it.
Yeah, this whole situation. I mean, you saw the head coach. I don't know if you've seen the clip of the head coach last week after the game. Just you can see the angst and the anger with which he answered some questions. Not liking a lot of the public lawyers, if you will, that aren't really lawyers coming after the 16-year-old and his program and the school and all that. And there seems to be a division, obviously, that's going on down there. And I hope they get it ironed out, because kids do stupid things. And I don't think for a second that they thought, oh, yeah, let's see if we can, harm this kid. I think it was more of a practical joke that just turned sideways real quickly. And that's just my interpretation of the situation, from which I've heard, like Parker, from people that know what went on. And the kid is torn up about it, and he should be. And I think it's just, I don't want to say it's being overblown, because it's not. I think it's being the kid's name, for one instance. And I know there's that saying, one bad thing can ruin every good thing you've ever done in your life, which is true, but it's not necessarily fair for a 16-year-old kid at the same time. So, yeah, that's where I stand on this situation.
Yeah. Well,
so we try to stay away from it as much as possible. And there's a reason why we didn't report or say anything about it.
The best way to handle a situation like this is, especially when you do have somebody that young and that immature, who's got a lot of life ahead of them, you don't absolve them, you don't condemn them, you just let their actions from there on out dictate how that particular in the line. So, you know what? As long as he keeps it on the straight and narrow, I don't think that's something anybody's going to be holding over his head 5-10 years down the road. And you would hope that is the case, right? We got another $20 super chat, courtesy of my man, Virgil Walker, who says, I'm enjoying this season, but I can't wait for you men to come through SEC country. I'm here in Georgia repping the Sooners until y'all get here. Which place are you looking forward to visiting next year? Hashtag Boomer Sooner. Virgil, man, we always appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate your super chats week in and week out. For me, the place I'm looking forward to the most next year, and I better see you there, because like you said, you're in Georgia. It's not that far of a trip for you. I better see you at Jordan Hare next year. I'm excited to go to Auburn.
Plains. Yeah. What are all the away games next year?
It's Auburn, Missouri,
yeah,
Ole Miss, and LSU.
And South Carolina's at home, right?
South Carolina's home, Tennessee's home, Bama's home.
As much as I dislike Baton Rouge, I'm actually looking forward just to the atmosphere. If it's a night game, if it's a day game, I'm with you. I'm Auburn all the way. I think that's.
I don't like Louisiana. I don't like it.
Yeah, well, I'm not a fan either, except for I do like visiting New Orleans. I'm not a big fan of long stays in Louisiana, though. I'm with you there. All right, let's talk about the A&M situation. You brought up the Terry Bus situation. Look, they're still talking. Like, we can say it. Like, they're still talking. Like, the line of communication never stopped. So let's make that clear. So it's not like it's like breaking news. They still talking to Terry Bus. No, they never stopped. Like, the dude almost visited Oklahoma again after he committed A&M. So, like, they never stopped talking.
Yeah, and that's important to acknowledge, Brandon. And that right there is that is a detail that I would hope everybody more or less takes for granted when it comes to recruiting, unless we specifically tell you otherwise. Like, for instance, when Zadavian Sims committed to Oregon, that was kind of the end of that between him and OU because of the circumstances there. And we said as much. But in today's day and age, with the transfer portal and how prevalent it is, what an institution it is in and of itself, and how many players over the course of their collegiate careers will end up making a trip through the portal, it behooves you to maintain those relationships. Look no further than a guy like Brennan Thompson, for instance, right? Who had relationships with both Emmett Jones and with Jay Valai. And so the second he hit the transfer portal, boom, you're on top of that guy. So, or Jacob Lacey, who had a relationship with Todd Bates, dating back to his days at Clemson. So just because a kid commits elsewhere doesn't mean that's it, the end of it between him and OU. In most cases, the staff is going to continue to cultivate that relationship and at least keep that line of communication open, because even if it doesn't pay off in the here and now, who's to say it doesn't pay off 2, 3, even 4 years down the road?
No, that's fair. And I know everybody wants to instantly start talking about, David Hicks. I think that's everybody's go-to is, oh, what's up with David Hicks in Oklahoma and this and that. Look, anything you hear up to this point is just talk, because until the kid, or unless the kid gets into the portal, it's just talk. That's all it is. And I think you would benefit yourselves if you didn't get your hopes up too high on a lot of this, because a lot of the situation with A&M is going to predicate on what happens to Elijah Robinson. If Elijah Robinson heads elsewhere, and I don't think he wants to, I think he wants to stay, obviously, at A&M. I think he feels like he's made his mark. He's working his way up the ladder, all that type of stuff. But it's going to, I'll put you like this. Whoever they hire, I think the administration is, they're not going to strong arm the new hire. I think they're going to nudge them in the direction of keeping Elijah Robinson on staff. And I think that's more so the mindset than anything else. Having said that, his name is brought up with other jobs right now, as far as DCs or defensive line coaches and all that. So I could see if Lincoln Riley, Muleshoe, whatever you want to call him, doesn't leave USC and stays there with all the openings they have there, and the fact if you bring in a new DC, they're going to want their guys there, and they're probably not going to be like, okay, new DC, keep everybody that's there. Like, and I think for the most part, maybe they will in certain instances, but if you have a chance to get Elijah Robinson and you can bring him in as an associate head coach and a co-DC and a defensive line coach, if you're Lincoln Riley, you're stupid not to. Now, do I think they can pull that off? I doubt it. But those type of ideas are being thrown around throughout the world of college football. And I think it's also, Parker, it's gonna depend on what other jobs open up. Like, what if Florida's opens up, like some people think it's going to here pretty soon? You're going to see a lot of domino effects start to go across the world of college football, not just at the head coaching spots, but a lot of position and assistant and play caller coordinator spots, because that's going to lead to this and that's going to lead to that, and boom, 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 boom. Domino effect starts to hit. It starts with A&M. Then if Florida opens up, you have that. What if Ohio State and Ryan Day, what if he decides to go to the NFL? That's a heavy rumor out there right now. Like, there is a lot of things. Like, this could be a nightmare of a fun nightmare.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you're an Oklahoma fan, your program isn't involved with any of it. So you kind of got the catbird seat. You can just sit back and watch the chaos and enjoy it. Now,
unless somebody comes and picks one of your coaches.
Okay, well, sure. That is true. And it is worth noting, and acknowledging that the more vacancies you have across college football, the more opportunities there are for somebody to swoop in and grab a guy like Jeff Lebby. But that's a conversation.
If you were a betting man right now, you think he stays or leaves? I think he stays.
I think he stays.
Yeah.
I think he stays because I think the jobs that his name will be thrown around for a year or two down the line after Jackson Arnold has the chance to run the Oklahoma offense are going to blow away the jobs that he might be in the conversation for right now. So
I think he's well aware.
Long-term business perspective here, Jeff Lebby would be well advised to stick it out at Oklahoma for a little while longer. Now, we're going to have to talk Nate Roberts, so we'll get there in just a second. But first, you're not allowed to explain your answer because no context is the best context. But one word, or I suppose 2-word answer. Who is the next head coach at Texas A&M University? Your answer is...
I'm going to say Elko.
I've been saying it all week. That's the sensible hire.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about A&M, though, is that I have no faith that they'll make the sensible hire. I think they'll go for sexy instead of sensible.
Oh, man. You just want a crap show. I think everybody does. I think that's because that's what we're used to seeing down there. Like, they can't get it right. It's not like Texas isn't fun because it looks like they've got it right. Like, it's not as fun anymore. Like, it was fun watching them just go through coach after coach. If A&M gets Elko, I think that's the right hire. Yes. He understands it. He knows how to build. He's not a great recruiter himself, but he doesn't need to be if he surrounds himself with elite recruiters on staff. People are throwing Dabo Swinney's name out there, and I think that would be a good hire because I think culturally that would fit.
Yes, I heavily evangelical with a side of weird.
Mm-hmm.
Dabo Swinney, Texas A&M University.
People
nice juxtaposition. Now,
Drinkwitz. Somebody said Drinkwitz up here.
Oh gosh,
guys. See, I threw that out there to you yesterday, and you were like, well, yeah, but it fits. It fits.
My answer, and this is a name that you brought up in a phone call we were on a couple days ago, and I've heard it thrown around in a couple conversations I've had since then. My answer is Glenn Schumann. I think he's going to be the next.
Great. Would be a great hire.
Agree with that. I think he would be good for them as well to build around. Okay, so that brings us to Nate Roberts. He was at Oklahoma this past weekend. He did a segment on the pregame show on the Ref Sports Radio Network with yours truly. And then today, Wednesday, November 15th, 2023, we got a prediction flying in for Ohio State for the 4-star tight end out of Washington, Oklahoma. Your thoughts, Mr. Drum?
I think that Ohio State may be in it, but if he doesn't go to Oklahoma, I think it would shock so many people, including me, including a lot of national people, It just doesn't make sense.
It would be Peyton Pierce all over again, is what it would be. Yeah. And I'll say this, I think Ohio State's top 2, but I don't think they're 1. I really don't think they're 1. And I mentioned it on the radio earlier today. If you were listening to that segment that he did on the pregame show Saturday, he kind of slipped up for a second because he said, and I don't even know if he realized it. It was like a blink and you missed it type of deal. But I asked him a question about the Sooners in-state haul in the class of 2025 because OU has 6 of the top 10 players in the state in that cycle already committed. And at some point in his answer, he said, we're building a great class here.
Yeah.
Use the word we in reference to Oklahoma. So maybe that doesn't tell you the full story, but it's pretty revealing nonetheless.
Yeah, he just is so close with Kevin Sperry. He's so close with a lot of the Oklahoma guys. Like he goes and trains and runs routes with the Carl Albert guys in the offseason. I've been invited to several of those training sessions and those throwing sessions and route running sessions. And that would just be so shocking if he just decided, you know what, guys, see y'all later. I'm out. I understood the Notre Dame to begin with, the commitment there, because
they have a decorated history when it comes to tight ends.
Yeah, and Oklahoma like they waited. They kind of drug their feet on the offer with him.
They did. They slow played him for a little while there, and that kind of hurt. But I just remember, like, the thing that sticks out to me as it pertains to that Ohio State prediction and how much validity it holds is I went out to Washington to visit with Nate the day he decommitted from Notre Dame. And we talked. He kind of explained his thought process to me. And it was something that we knew was coming for about a month, 3-4 weeks leading up to it. We knew at some point he was decommitting from Notre Dame. It was just a matter of when. He pulls the trigger. He and Washington are practicing that day. I go out there, we talk, and he's kind of laying out why he made that decision. And one thing that he said over the course of that conversation is particularly pertinent to this conversation. And he said, at the end of it all, I just wasn't sure I wanted to be 13 hours away from home. Folks, I don't have a map in front of me, so you can feel free to double check me on this at home. I don't believe Columbus, Ohio is any closer to Washington, Oklahoma than South Bend, Indiana is.
I want to say it is 13. I can't remember the drive, 13, 14-hour drive. Somebody'd have to look that up. I drove it in 2017 to go up there for that game. I do not remember how long it was.
I'll tell you, because I just made that drive a couple months ago for the Cincinnati game. It's 16 hours from Columbus. Well, maybe closer to 15. Either way, a lot of hours. A lot of hours on the road.
Yeah. I mean, that is that's a distance, man. And if 12 hours is too far, why wouldn't 15 hours be too far? I guess that's how you got to look at it. Unless you feel a lot more comfortable with that staff. And I get it. Brian Hartline's recruiting you. I understand. But I think you also got to look at the fact that this Ryan Day, like, how shocked would you be if he chose Norman or chose the NFL, excuse me?
At this point, that would shock me just about as little as Jim Harbaugh taking an NFL job, because his name gets mentioned every single year in the NFL coaching carousel, right? He hasn't taken a job yet. And I guess Jim Harbaugh did coach in the NFL at one point, but Jim Harbaugh's name has also been tossed around probably 4 or 5 years in a row at this point for this job or that job, Bears, Vikings, Raiders. And so those are kind of the two college guys. Well, and Urban Meyer for a while there. You can always count on their names popping up. And it does feel like it's only a matter of time until he makes that jump. It's a when, not if type of deal.
And we're talking about Day, not Harbaugh, right? Or both.
Yes, I was talking about Day, but I think that could be applicable to both.
It is applicable to both. Yes, correct. So I think this, if you're Ryan Day, I think this is the year to do it, just because of what you're losing at wide receiver. Like, you're losing some dudes, right? You're losing your tight end, Stover, right? I believe they're losing several of their D linemen. Like, this is the year to do it if you're going to do it. Like, before.
Well, I mean, you say that. Ohio State recruits on a truly elite level every year. And so, like, I understand where you're coming from, but I also feel as though it needs to be acknowledged. Ohio State will have dudes that step into other dudes' shoes. Like, that's just how it rolls up there.
How many Marvin Harrison Juniors are there out there?
There are very few.
And
But
I get they had Garrett Wilson before that, but they're two different types of players. Like, I'm talking like Marvin Harrison Jr. is that guy. Was he like 6'3", 6'4", right? He's big.
yeah. Even
big,
so, like,
I mean, he's a different breed of cat, man.
Gosh, Ohio State, what Brian Hartline has assembled in that receiver room is ungodly.
Yeah, it's stupid.
Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka.
Yeah,
He's still got
a year.
Yeah, he's got a year.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a year. And so it keeps rolling, man. Brandon Innes is there now. We'll see if they can hold on to Jeremiah Smith. But, yeah, that's one position that Ohio State never needs to worry about as long as Brian Hartline is there.
Where would Smith flip to? Florida, right? Is that where he's leaning towards right now?
Florida State is where the
Florida
buzz
State.
is recently. But it feels like the buzz is for a new school pretty much every month. I think that's kind of by design, knowing the way that recruitment is ultimately going to be decided.
Yep.
But and by the way, on that note, Oklahoma's not getting Jordan Seaton. So if you have a Jordan Seaton question, don't bother with it. They're not. Grant Bricks, we had a listener.
Isn't he coming to visit though? Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. That's how I feel about it. Even though
we had a listener, Terry Tunnel, ask us earlier in the chat where we think Grant Bricks ends up. So that brings us to that whole conversation.
I'll just give my spiel. I think it's Oklahoma. And why I think it's Oklahoma is because I get that his mom doesn't come on a lot of the visits, the distance visits, like because she's very sold on Nebraska. That's where
she's also recovering from surgery right now, so she would have made this trip.
So but at the same time, like she's very sold on Nebraska. Like we can agree on that. Like that, it seems like that's acknowledged. Everybody that reports on it says she's sold on Nebraska. Now, I don't think she's sold to the point that she's like, no, you can't go to Oklahoma. I think, and there's a lot of people that feel that, and I think that's false. I think if Grant decides I'm going to Oklahoma, she will support him 100%. Yeah. I think Dad favors Oklahoma. You can see it. Just in talking to him, he's gotten to know the Boganowskis. He's gotten to know the Hawkins family. He's gotten to know quite a bit of the families within the Oklahoma recruiting landscape and the recruiting class. So I think that to me is a lot moving forward. And I think Grant himself sees what he can become in Norman. And ultimately, I think he feels like he fits in Norman a little bit. He's a country kid, small town kid, and Oklahoma, ironically, is in a big city, considering it's in the Oklahoma City metro. But it's not to the point where he's just like, landlocked. He can go out and fish and hunt and do everything he wants to do. Just a short distance away from Norman. So
I can go take a dip in the Dirty Bird.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to do. So I just think at the end of the day, he chooses Oklahoma because almost everything outside of location screams Oklahoma in that recruitment. But outside of that, I'll let you dive in because you have more on it than I do.
Yeah. And look, folks, I am officially at the point where I have no idea what the timeline is. It's been pushed back enough times and I've taken guesses and been wrong enough times that at this point I'm just like, okay, whenever it happens, it happens. I'll be prepared for it when it does, but I'm not going to wake up every morning expecting it,
December 20th.
If it takes that long. Now, he did say he did say last I went and visited him in Iowa 2.5 weeks ago, he does want to make the decision before National Signing Day. He does not want to wait that long because he understands everybody is kind of waiting on him. Yeah. And this has already dragged out longer than he wanted. It's already dragged out longer than his family wanted. But this is a kid that is committed to measuring twice and cutting once. And so he's going to be 100% confident in the decision whenever he does make it. And I continue to roll with Oklahoma here because, and this goes back to another visit I made up there in mid-October, just about a month ago. And one of the things that Grant told me that day, after he and his team had just won their final game of the regular season, was, look, and this was fresh after OU Texas, right? This was fresh after OU Texas. He said, look, everything kind of points in one direction right now. And the insinuation there was that, okay, like Oklahoma is the leader. Oklahoma is where I'm leaning.
Mm.
And so if that was the kid's feeling at that point, my only question would be, what has happened that could possibly have changed his mind? And you can say 2 losses. Oklahoma lost to Kansas and Oklahoma State. Fine. Okay, you know what? If that's the way you want to look at it, sure. Record-wise, Oklahoma is still outpacing Kansas State. They're still outpacing Nebraska. And you want to talk about putting your best foot forward for a kid? The Sooners could not have picked a better weekend to host Grant Brix than this past weekend. Because with that environment, that atmosphere, the way that the offense was clicking, the way that Oklahoma dominated on both sides of the ball, the light shows between quarters, several of his peers in town that he knows and is familiar with, Michael Hawkins, Michael Boganowski, their families, etc. It was all there this past weekend. And that was about as good of an impression to the naked eye that Oklahoma could have made on that kid. Again, there is no game day to this point in the year that has taken place in Norman where it feels like, yeah, you would have rather have had Grant Brix in town that weekend. No, like that was the weekend to do it. And the Sooners made a statement on and off the field. I was told Brix was out hanging with the commits and some of the players until well after midnight, which is great to hear if you're an OU fan, because you're like, okay, well, clearly he vibes with those guys. Yeah. So as things stand right now, am I 100% confident in it? No, because like with this kid and this recruitment, you can't be 100% confident in anything. But I will maintain that Oklahoma is in the best spot here heading into the home stretch. And in my mind, I think that holds whether or not he takes the Kansas State visit on November 25th, because this has, for the last 4 months or so, this has been more of an OU Nebraska battle with K-State. Not distant, but not terribly close third place. So if he visits Kansas State on November 25th, okay, fine. But Oklahoma has the most to offer a kid like Brix. Between those 3 schools, Oklahoma has the most to offer. I think that's just like most everyone can acknowledge that. And with Nebraska kind of scuffling down the stretch here, they got to play Wisconsin and Iowa the next 2 weeks. They got to win one of those 2 games to be bowl eligible. Let's say that's all they do. Let's say they go 6-6 or even 5-7. What does that do to assuage Brix's concerns about Nebraska being the most unproven of the 3 options on the table? Not much. So I like where Oklahoma sits. I haven't really wavered on that. And I don't really see myself wavering on it. at this point, it's just one of those things that I'm kind of content to ride it out. And you know what? If he picks Nebraska in the end, I think you can look at that as an Oklahoma fan and be okay with it. As much as it's going to suck, you can say, okay, well, end of the day, Oklahoma couldn't have recruited that kid any better than they did. And at the end of it all, nothing was going to keep him from staying close to home. That's the way you look at it if he ends up picking Nebraska. But I still feel as though he'll pick Oklahoma.
So you don't think losing to Wisconsin and Iowa change much in that? I mean, 7-5 and 5-7, that's pretty big.
Yeah, like if Nebraska were to beat Wisconsin and Iowa,
I don't think it's going to happen, but
that gives them more of a leg to stand on. But they're a 5-point dog on the road to Wisconsin, and I don't see them beating Iowa the final weekend of the regular season. If they do win those last two games, that's big. And again, maybe that gives them more of a leg to stand on. But right now, Nebraska hasn't really done anything this year that could tangibly make a kid like that believe that what his worries about the future of the program are, about the lack of proof of concept and the worries that he has therein, those aren't going away based on what Nebraska has and hasn't done on the field this season.
So just so we're clear here, if Iowa goes 0-2 and Nebraska wins their next two games, do you realize that Nebraska's playing Michigan or Ohio State in the Big Ten title game?
Oh my gosh. That's how bad the Big Ten West is?
That is how bad it is. I just looked at it. I was like, no way. They're second, right? They're second. In conference, Iowa's 5-2. Nebraska is 3-4. They would be each would be 5-4 with Nebraska having the head-to-head over Iowa to go to the Big Ten title game. No lie. No lie. It's so bad. It's so bad. So you got to think, like, when they bring in, the other squads and they split things up, it's going to be a lot better. Like the Big Ten conference the title game is going to look a lot sweeter.
You know what's crazy is, like, imagine throwing USC into the Big Ten West. Like, you want to talk about what an old culture or what an odd cultural marriage USC and the Big Ten is? Just imagine USC right now in the Big Ten West. There's really no in between. Either they would run that half of the conference, that division.
Oh, they absolutely would.
Either they just throttle everybody, or they would suck. Well, it'd suck, Brandon. Like, because the defenses that they'd have to play week in and week out in the Big Ten West, those put Pac-12 defenses to shame.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, there is no in between. Either they would be awesome in the Big Ten West, or they'd be on the same level as, like, Purdue.
But here's the thing: is if they score 14 points, they probably win. Assuming because the offense is so bad. I was just making an offensive joke in the Big Ten West.
Now that is true, but
Nebraska just lost 13-10 to Maryland last week at home.
USC did allow 50 points to Cal a couple weeks ago, though. So again, that program does have a gift for making highly challenged offenses look like juggernauts.
That program, no. That head coach and his former DC had a gift of making average offenses look great. That's fact. Like, we saw it at Oklahoma for how long? They make everybody look great. They make every quarterback that is average look way better than they should. And let's put it this way: like, Mike Stoops in 2015 and 2016 had a defense that was considered somewhat decent. And in 2015, they ranked the number 28 defense in the country. Lincoln Riley took over, and it went bad in 2017 to horrible in 2018. And he fired him, brought in Grinch. Grinch's defense to start in 2019 and 2020, they were pretty decent. 21, okay. He moves to USC and it just turned into crap. The longer you stay with Riley as a DC, it looks like the worse you get. I'm just going off past.
Makes you wonder. Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Now, several folks were asking about Eddie Pierre-Louis, and here's how I would sum that one up. Barring a drastic turn of events, I do not expect him in Oklahoma's class. That said, this recruitment has seen its share of drastic turns of events. So I can't 1,000% rule it out, but that is no longer one that we are counting on to end up in Oklahoma sooner.
Yeah, no, that's I wouldn't hold my breath if I'm an Oklahoma fan at this point. It just, every chance that he had to visit Oklahoma here recently, even when things looked to be trending towards Oklahoma's direction, it just seemed to not going to happen, and he wouldn't show up. So unless he shows up in Norman, or unless Beanbo and Venables and Lebby go down and just kill it in the in-home, I just can't see it happening. Yeah. Just can't see it happening.
And what adds another layer of weirdness to the whole ordeal is that he hasn't visited anywhere recently. He's supposed to have shown up at UCF, which is a lot closer to home, a couple times in that same time frame, and hasn't. So that has been a truly bizarre recruitment. And I first said it probably 3 weeks ago, and it bears repeating today. I've seen this movie before, and it ends up with the kid committing to the Oregon Ducks. So
yeah,
that is what I will be watching for.
So before we close this out, over under, people have made comments on here. Over under the amount of A&M transfers that OU is mentioned with / gets.
Is mentioned with / gets.
Okay, so very different two very different things. So mention with and then gets is what I'm saying. Like, well, so over under. So if I set the over under mention with 5, would you say over under? If I set the over under with the get at 2, would you say over under?
I would set the over under at guys they get at 2.5, and I'd be curious to hear your answer on that, because I think there's an equally compelling case for the over or the under. As far as guys that they're mentioned with, I don't even know how you quantify that, because they may be mentioned for certain guys that hit the portal from Texas A&M, but not by anyone credible, So the question becomes, what do you consider the threshold for mentioned with?
Yeah. I guess it's all subjective at that point. I would probably say I would take a push on the 5, because I think that's probably, a good number. And then you say 2.5. I'm going to say under. I think 2 is probably, just because, look, I think a lot of it's going to be, again, I said this, predicated on who they hire, number one, and who's kept, a la Elijah Robinson, and who's brought in, whether on offense and or on defense, to be the DC and or run things. And I think that's going to predetermine. Now, I've also heard it doesn't matter who stays and who goes. There's a lot of guys that are just going to dip out because they're tired of the inconsistencies in the program, and they don't want to waste their final years trying to rebuild and or hoping that this person comes in and fixes all the inadequacies in the locker room and within the program. So I take the under, just because I don't want to get the OU fans' hopes up that there's like this mass exodus, though we have heard that one way or the other there's going to be mass exodus. I'm inclined to just believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
And I just leave it at that.
Yeah. So I'll be the sunshine pumper then.
Do it.
I'll take the over. I'll say to get 3.
There you go. Somebody said Hicks and Dindy headed to OU per Brandon and Parker. No, we have not said that. We have actually stayed far away from the transfer portal talk on purpose on the message board.
I'll one up you. Hicks, Dindy, and Connor Wegman all going to be Sooners.
Oh, and if people are on audio, he's joking. All right. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider on the Visor YouTube Live. We want to appreciate everybody who was participating in the chat, all the super chats, but thank you guys. Thank you guys for listening, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on whatever platform you listen to on the podcast. We do this for you guys. Thank you guys so much. But to help us even more, please go over to OU Insider. You can sign up $9.99 a month. You get all sorts of information that we don't talk about on here. There's all sorts of stuff. I got some 2025 defensive line recruiting notes coming here in the next 24, 48 hours for you guys. We've got a lot of stuff coming. BYU coverage as OU gets closer to National Signing Day, as things start to iron out within some of the coaching ranks, and you start to see more and more coaches let go and or fired. We're going to have you covered on the flips, all that type of stuff. So make sure you join. $9.99 a month. OUinsider.com VIP. We're there answering chat questions, answering any board questions. You can start whatever chat you want. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of OU fans on there every day willing to chat and talk about your passion, which is Oklahoma football, recruiting, Oklahoma basketball, all that stuff. By the way, Moser and his team look a lot better this year early on.
They do. And hey, we're going to have to get our guy Brody Lusk
we got to get him on
stream
here.
or a podcast one of these days, because he is killing it with the basketball insider information and recruiting notes. So if you want to know what's going on behind the scenes with that Sooner Hoops program, which looks awesome to kick off this 2023-24 season, Brody has loads of insights over on OUinsider.com.
Real quickly, let's answer this real quick. Our man, James Stimick, just also sent us another super chat. Thank you so much, James, for the $2. BV sticks with roof or hire Zach Barnett just was fired at Mississippi State. Obviously, Zach Selman is the AD at Mississippi State right now, the OU alum, the former Sooner Club, all that type of stuff. Like he's a legacy, probably your next AD. So if you want to see how Oklahoma's future coaching hires are going to take place, I would go pay attention what is going to happen at Mississippi State, because how he handles that is probably how everything's going to be handled within when he gets to Oklahoma and becomes the AD in the future. And anybody that doesn't think he's going to be the AD next, you're crazy. It's just crazy. He's the next AD at OU. But as far as Zach Arnett, like, I think it all depends. I don't know that I can put a percentage on it. I'm sorry, James.
I'm on the bring BO back train.
I would love to have Brian Odom back. I think that would be great for recruiting. I think that would be great just having another Oklahoma guy, back in Norman. It'd be awesome. And I think he fits because he's going to know a lot of the staffers, because he was here when playing and were coaching when they were here and coaching back in the day. So there's a lot of connections there. But if he was to go Zach Arnett as a linebacker coach and bring him in to help with the co-DC title and have him help him calling the plays, they run a similar odd front, right? But the difference is BV's more multiple than Arnett. Arnett's strictly like a 3-3-5, 3-4, that type of odd front, whereas Venables he goes into a 4-2-5, he goes in over under, he does all sorts of different things, and why he's a multiple defensive coordinator. And if they could somehow marriage their philosophies together with how good Arnett is at DC, that would be interesting. That would be really interesting. But I don't know how they would mesh together. How about you, Parker?
Yeah, again, my opinion is you bring back Brian Odom, great coach, great recruiter, perfect fit. Knows he's going to know most everybody on staff. He's going to be able to there are things he can do as an alumnus. I guess, alumnus is kind of a loosely used word because I know he didn't graduate from OU, but having attended OU, having coached there before, there are things that he can bring to the table, insights, valuable insights that he can provide that you won't get from another guy that is an outsider. So I like Brian Odom if and when Ted Roof retires. That is firmly the camp that I'm in. But I think Zach Arnett's a great defensive mind, and he's going to land on his feet one way or another.
Yeah, if they hired Arnett, bro, that would be huge, huge, huge. Just because I think it fits perfect with the co-DC linebacker coach, kind of like what Roof has right now. But anyways, I digress. All right, that's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live, powered by Olipop. Again, if you're not on OU Insider, please go sign up. $9.99 a month. It'll get you all the way to, what is today's date? Right before National Signing Day, or you can sign up for the whole year and you'll get almost all the way to National Signing Day next year, and you'll get the whole SEC season if you sign up today, which is awesome. Year one, you'll get both of the National Signing Days. You'll get all the coaching changes. You'll get the transfer portal stuff. You'll get the flips. You'll get all the junior days. You'll get the spring game. You'll get all the visits during the spring. You'll get the champion barbecue, the party in the palace, all the official visits. You'll get the fall camp updates. You'll get the summer updates. You'll get the whole basketball season, the softball season, the baseball season, and then obviously the first SEC season that OU will be playing in next year. And we'll have you covered all the way up to this point, or whatever day you sign up on OU Insider. We'd love to have you join the thousands and thousands of OU fans that are already on there talking every day. So much going on there on OU Insider as far as news goes, as far as basketball. Our man Brody Lust dropping basketball recruiting notes and basketball insider info, team info. That dude's just he's a stud. So if you're big into basketball, that's where you want to be. If you're big into recruiting, Parker and I have you covered on that. Big into team, obviously we all have you covered that. Jesse, Brian Clinton, we've got an awesome staff. So come join us. Make sure you're part of the club. OUinsider.com VIP. All right, for my man Spencer Forsythe on the board, for Parker Thune, my name is Brandon Drum. You guys have a blessed night.